it's ever so slightly less than that for the hypercars. It's far more than that for the LMP2s, and it's quite a bit less than that for the GTEs. But we shall see. We're expecting the pit window for the bulk of these cars to be around about 40 minutes into the race. The lap time you can see on the top left is counting down, so we've still got 53 and a bit minutes to go until the final lap of this race. But yes, at the moment, Vitilio has not looked particularly bothered about getting past the stars yet. Sometimes it's worth not taking too much time out of yourself by fighting too hard, because as you can see, they've built a decent gap back to Salgatov as Marshall and I think Nowopowski are fighting for P10 in the hypercar field, and I think Nowopowski has just sent it up the inside of Mercedes. Not quite got the move done. As we come into the stadium section, there is a very interesting looking Christopher Hyman just behind them as well. And Marshall hasn't actually been able to get the place back, but he's not looking too happy about it with the little flash there. And Nowopowski's made a place up, but he is 3 seconds down the road from Scad Furler. So will we be able to see a bit of pace from Nowopowski, or is Marshall going to try and get back? As we've mentioned, these cars, these hypercars do have, similar to the Mercedes F1 car on iRacing, they have got their own electric attack mode, and they can use 3 different settings in the race. They've got attack, balanced and build, but they can only change the setting 4 times per lap, so you can't tailor it for every corner. And also you've only got limited batteries. Nowopowski has outbraked himself. Oh, but a bit of snap oversteer there from Marshall, as I think he was looking to get the power down as early as possible, because he could sense that there was going to be a run on there, and I think Nowopowski is going to escape round the hairpin. We're expecting this hairpin, or the braking zone for it, to be... Oh, and they've touched!
I think that was always going to happen, Chris. They were getting closer and closer. It's just a matter of time. Here comes Hammer.
Yeah, you could say it's hammer time. I won't do that more than once. And yeah, it's well, they've also got the issue of Romain Verdelivo, who is a very good driver coming up behind them, and it's interesting to see what's going to happen with that. And I think there's been an incident further up in the hypercars. See, yeah, Jan Curbs is coming down, so we can hopefully get a replay of that. Oh dear, that's not good. That's the number 6 as well, which is Neil DeBacco, who's still going, so it's into the right of him. You can see there's quite a few cars that have come off there.
That's quite a big incident. This time, take another look at it. The standings actually took some time. Looks like the GTE was involved. They've spun coming out the corner. It's wiped out half of the BMW field.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate, and I think we're going to see more of that with a new car interacting with cars that are very sort of familiar with how they're going. And we are aware, I think, of... Oh, I believe it's come back. There are some technical issues for some people. I'm hoping they've been resolved. I can certainly see on the YouTube that we appear to be going. But we'll see what we can get going. It's been a couple of seasons. At least hopefully we can get some of the racing to you, as we can follow Verdelivo still on his recovery drive, considering he had an entire LMP2 field to get through. I think he's done quite well to dive through. Those of you who were with us 2+ seasons ago will remember he was very good at cutting his way through traffic, and it's interesting to see that skill has retained through another car. And we get another example here. Let's see how Sfolassi and Panicia, they both managed to clear that GTE before getting to the Nord curve, and I think they'll both be relieved of that, because it is not a corner you want to be messing with another car in, because you really cannot take that too wide without choosing to lose an absolutely stupid amount of time. And you can see here the hypercars have firmly caught up with the GTE field. I think the hypercars will be pleased that this is smaller than news from GTE field. I don't think you can say the same with GTE, as is Sfolassi. Would they be very kindly let through by there? But are the GTE going to be behind the number 15 there at Salgatov? He's under no obligation to leave the room there, but there is an element of self-preservation as well.
I mean, it's a unique challenge when you have an outweighed class like we have here. So BMWs are quite a small such a range of iRacing. High level, and the same for the lower level. Very different ability to take. As we know, iRacing and taking those is a skill.
100%. You can see here the real skill of being able to battle as Selassie and Penicia are here, while also trying to get around all this traffic. It really is impressive how these drivers are able to keep doing this lap after lap after lap. And as much as it's called a sprint series, an hour-long race, it's a long time to be racing. It's a long time for things to go wrong. As we see Amber Hawkins with Lorenzo Scanfurla and Jim Tobacco right behind them. Hawkins in the number 19 car, as someone seems to have just disappeared up ahead. And yeah, an unhappy Corvette, Rosetta Ford. And if you're in a GTE, you're going to want these cars to be coming past you on the straight. There's not a huge amount you can do. But yeah, I mean, Amber Hawkins and Svalok Sang just ahead have both done quite well. They've made 6 and 8 places respectively since the start of this race. So they've been beneficiaries from those crashes. Neil Tobacco very much caught in it as well, and I believe still in the pits, probably out of this race. We've got 2 hypercars that are still driving, but several laps down. Matthew Kakino, who qualified in 7th, but is now down in 15th in class. He is still on lap 4, while the leaders are on lap 8. And then Roberto Edward, again, both names that will be familiar to any long-time viewers. He is still only on lap 2. He had an 8-minute repair after having to pit on lap 1. So there was, they were, I think, turn 1 victims, but we've not seen many more since then. And Svalasi so far seems to be coping quite well with the, at this point, extreme amount of pressure that Penicia is putting him under. But again, I think similar to what we were talking about earlier, I don't think Penicia is necessarily looking to make that move unless a wide open opportunity presents itself. Just happy to sit in that draft, save a bit of fuel, and we can perhaps see what happens when we get to the pit stops.
Yeah, we're seeing range to 4 seconds pit stops in terms of time you're losing. So it just depends on where you land on the traffic, where you're actually thinking of pitting as well. Most of the time over a bit in traffic, some time up.
Yeah, we've seen it before. It doesn't necessarily equate. You can have the raw lap speed, but if you've not got that savvy to get through traffic, you end up losing so much more time than you can gain just from being quick over an individual lap. But this battle has been quite hard considering how close the cars have been. But it's been interesting to read some of the feedback from some of the drivers about how things like it's taking more laps than they were expecting for the tyres to engage. Having to mess with some of the settings you can change during the race just to get that car turning in properly under cold tyres. This is actually the closest Penicia's been in a few laps, I think, so it'll be interesting to see after we've come through the stadium section, are we going to see a move happen? Because at a certain point, Sean, if you put all this pressure on, you're actually going to end up making the driver in front drive slower.
Yeah, you see it all the time, particularly when you're racing yourself. You come up against a driver that feel like you're faster than them. As you go around the track, lap after lap, you notice you're dropping a couple of tenths. It builds up over time. If 3 or 4 laps, like being a long way off the lead. So at the moment, it's almost 6 seconds off.
Yeah, Kevin Crosney has just let the fastest lap of the race, a 1:24.38, and that is nearly a full second quicker than what Svalasi and Penicia have been managing. So Kevin Crosney really benefiting from those of you who missed the start from the technical issues. Crosney managed to get a good launch over Verdolivo, and then Verdolivo just got swarmed into turn 1, and Crosney's just never looked back since. I mean, the 5.5 second gap is not that much in the grand scheme of things, but it's certainly enough to take a lot of the early pressure off of the driver. As we can have a look at Heather Knapp in the LMP2, getting past a GTE, but they are on the same lap there, so I'm guessing Heather Knapp has struggled through the traffic. So we'll see how she's able to get on as she just misses the apex and the exit on the hairpin. That car actually looks to me, Sean, like it's crabbing a little bit.
It's definitely not going to pace over the GTE. If you saw there, that GTE should be away from it. Heather has been off track a couple of times. It's particularly sausages out of the bump, and as we saw out the head, it's real damage.
Yeah, and it will be tricky for those GTs as well, because they'll be trying to focus on their own race, and as you can see from the track map, It's beginning to get mixed up. We've not quite got what we had with the old series, where you'd end up with all three classes around the 20-minute stage, all on the same third of the pack. So I think an element of relief for the drivers there, as we are back with Jus Baumeister, who's still in the lead of LMP2s. He's got Kaz Brinkhuizen just behind, just 3/4 of a second behind. They have managed to drop Christian Walter, though, who is now 2 seconds down the road, with the three of them in the podium positions. It's a full 11 seconds back to Ballina in fourth. So they can almost afford now to start to be a little bit more aggressive with each other, because they're not necessarily costing themselves so much lap time compared to the rest of the field. And you can sort of see that from Brinkhuizen, who I think is just edging around a little bit more than we saw with Pinnicha on Svilassi while we're following them. Baumeister, though, a bit indecisive, trying to get around that GTE. Is that going to cost him? Brinkhuizen is about as close as you would like to be coming down the hairpin, but has taken the inside of this curve, which is going to become the outside of the hairpin. That's an advantage for Baumeister, I would say, because he can control the apex, and he's managed to do that. And he's defending very hard there. That was lucky. That could have so easily been contact. But Baumeister trusting in the other driver there. But is Brinkhuizen going to be able to get the inside into Mercedes? He's not. He's going to switch around to the outside again. Baumeister's able to control that apex. This is very close here, but it's been a good run, I should say, Dawn. But turn 11, my absolute nemesis, especially as we're going into the dark. You cannot see the apex as you come round. It looks nice and clear on the broadcast, but we're not in the cockpits of these cars. It is very difficult, unless you've done a lot of practice and know this track like the back of your hand, to pick that apex. Baumeister and Brinkhuizen both manage it, but 0.3 of a second separate the two of them as we come through onto the start of what is, for them, lap 12. And it's actually still that for the hypercars as well, because as we said earlier, there's not that much of a pace disparity between the two classes.
About halfway through the tag field here as well. Let's get to see. There's still a lot of running to do before the pit stop. One thing I've managed to get hold of, though, is what happened to right at the start. Let's go back to
So let's see, this would have been as we come through on lap 1. And I don't believe the replay is working for me, unfortunately, so I can't really see what's happening to him.
So he's just been tagged from the inside from the car behind, and it's flung him straight into the wall. It looks got some damage. There are a couple of cars that went off behind him as well. So race position. Since then, we have had a couple of
Yeah, we've lost Daniel Rees from the LMP2 field. It doesn't look like he was able to take to the track. But Verdelivo's back up into 9th position, which, considering how big of a hit that must have been, he's also lapping quicker than everyone outside of the podium positions, which, you know, we've seen some impressive driving from Verdelivo before, but if that car has got damage and he's still lapping it that quickly, I think we've got someone to watch out for the rest of the series. But look just how congested it's getting. These are predominantly hypercars in front, so this is all for position. And let's see how easily Verdelivo can sieve through them, as we've got an LMP2 on the inside there, managed to get round there. One thing these hypercar drivers will find, as we've got on board with Verdelivo, they are downforce compared to the LMP2, so they can do some silly things on the high-speed corners. They're just going to be able to turn so much more. And again, don't be deceived by just how light that is. It's not that easy to pick out. You can just see the closing distance there from Verdelivo. He's really catching up to the back of David Marshall, but Marshall is going to benefit from the draft of Jim de Backer in front, and Jim de Backer is no slouch himself, so it's just that little bit hard for Verdelivo to get round, and he's just got a little bit wide. And I think our leader of the LMP2 field has potentially been involved in an incident, because he is down to 3rd now and not very happy on voice chat. So that is a real shame. As Verdelivo here, are we going to see these cars go 3 wide? Not quite, but oh, that's a big curb hit there. Or I think that must have been, I think that's Neil de Backer actually, a few laps down. So probably not the end of the world, because he's not really fighting for the position. But Verdelivo, oh, he's having a look on the inside there. Is he going to be able to get? He knows it's quicker, and he's got it done. Sean, that was a lovely move.
Yeah, he set that up way up that straight. You can see it there. It's way improved more weight to put the pressure on. By the time they got to the
that is a very experienced prototype driver getting the job done, but I think Jim DeBacker is going to be a slightly trickier proposition. We've seen him racing before in this series. He is a quick driver along with his brother, and I think Verdelivo, as good as he is, he's going to have to pull out all the stops to get past here. I mean, one other thing to look out for is Verdelivo is only actually 15 seconds off the lead. So, it says again, very congested here. That's Augustin Corraliza in the LMP2, and he's getting squeezed out there. There's GT behind him as well, but I mean, Panicci's managed to get through. Spilassi, I think they've got caught a little bit more by that. But again, only 0.4 of a second behind.
Yeah, so the traffic's really starting to take its toll now. We've got the LMPs on over 10 GTs at the same time as these hypercars get very there. We are 7 or 8 laps away from the race as well, so we can see what's coming around in that
Yeah, you'll see an endurance series with some of our teams where they've got the really top quality spotters would be able to identify where the clean traffic is going to be as they come back out from the pit stops. It may well be worth some of these drivers, if they're really on it, just pitching a lap or two earlier than they necessarily need to. As you can see, Jim DeBacker there, he's getting held up by an LMP2. Is it Verdelivo's car come into the stadium sector? It doesn't look like he's going to do anything. Possibly the most sensible decision to make there, because again, like the North Curve turn 1, that turn 11 is not the turn you want to be going too wide through, because you're both going to lose a lot of time, and I suspect that these one cars will be going off. As you can see, the closing distance there between the hypercars and the GTEs, that was genuinely quite scary for me just as a viewer. Goodness knows how that felt for Jim DeBacker or the GTE in question. But he has now just got a quarter of a second separating him and Verdelivo behind him. You see just how much that car wants to understeer in turn 1, and you could not get much more of a closed gap than you have between these two here. But is Verdelivo going to be able to take advantage of this down the straight? DeBacker very early on pulling to the left side just to indicate exactly what he's doing, but we're going to catch some GTE traffic as we get into the hairpin. DeBacker sensibly, nice and early, communicating to that GT that he's going round, but there is a slow GTE on the apex, but there's just nowhere for Verdelivo to go, so he hasn't been able to take advantage. But what this has allowed is David Marshall to catch back up, and is he going to be able to do anything? But this is getting very congested now, Sean.
Yeah, we just saw DeBacker there, just punching that king, so right down, Verdelivo right back into him as well. There's a couple more GTs for him to pass, so this is going to be a
Yeah, and as we see, Jus Baumeister is pitting from the LMP2 field. That may well be for damage, but fortunately, in a sense for him, if it is damage, it's well within the pit window. So we'll hopefully see what happens to him here. And you see, he's actually in the lead, so I hope this is perhaps a hypercar. Oh, a bit of contact behind. Oh, I wasn't expecting that. It was actually another LMP2. That was the 33. That was Heather Knapp, though that was possibly the damaged car from earlier, but just not judging the braking point right, and that's very unfortunate to see a car a few laps down affecting the, well, at that time, the leader of the LMP2 field, but I'm sure Kaz Brinkhuizen won't mind too much, and they have got a 1 second lead over Crystal Water now for P1 and P2 in the LMP2s, but this is still one of the closest battles in the field. As you can see just a little bit further up, we've got another close battle that's about to get absorbed by DeBacker Verdelivo and become a 4-car train.
Making a move. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah. He looks like he may have done, or is that still DeBacker in front in car number 14? I think it might well be. Well, there's an LMP2 behind, or that might be, I think that might be one of our lap down hypercars getting in the way, but there is now less than a second sequentially from 5th through to 8th. Amber Hawkins leading this little pack of 4, and lapping ever so slightly slower at the moment than Scanfurler behind, but Hawkins' fastest lap is a good 0.2 of a second quicker than anything Scanfurler's managed, so perhaps it's just the traffic getting in the way, and you can see going wide there, potentially affected by the GTE, but it's aside from the 1X that Amber will have picked up, it does allow for a slightly faster speed on the exit of the corner, so there's worse ways to have that happen, and Verdelivo has come into the pits. That is surely a tactical decision, to try and get the jump on this back, because I think he has perhaps realised it's going to cost him a lot of time trying to get past a train of 3 other hypercars. But where is that car going to come out? If you look on the track map, he's still stopped. He's actually timed this very well. Maybe Roman does have a very good spotter, because you can see just how much clear air there is in that half of the track right now. Most of our remaining 30 cars are around the hairpin section of the field. Yeah, he's coming out into nearly completely clean air. There is one car out there, that is, I believe, number 19, or position 19 rather, which is Devin Adams at the back of the LMP2 field. And then aside from that, and a GT that is Bo Ambos, there's really not a huge amount for Romain Verdelivo to concern himself with at the moment. So this might be Sean, this might be the time to stick attack mode on and just get some good lap times in.
Yeah, heard from the guys in the Discord is that attacking as soon as you come out of the pits is the best chance you've got of making up time, but everyone else is around balance. Running an attack from the back really help you, particularly when you're not in traffic like
Yeah, and Sean was talking to me before we started and telling me about how when he thinks the fastest laps of the race are going to get set, and he said lap 19 was around about the time where Marcelo Paniccia in second place at the hypercars has just set their fastest lap of the race, and Kaz Brinkhuizen in the lead of the LMP2s has also just set their fastest lap of the race. So I think Sean knows what he's talking about, is what that says to me, and it also says to me that Brinkhuizen was perhaps being held up a little bit by Baumeister.
Yeah, Baumeister's he's a very tactical driver. He knows where the car, he knows how to defend well, and it looks like now there's a bit of, say, clean air that's being taken there by hypercar. Now there's a bit of clean air, means laps are going to definitely speed up.
Yeah, and I think one other thing the LMP2s are going to have to consider that wasn't previously a problem is where there weren't that many LMP1s in the majority of the ESS splits, they were de facto the lead class in quite a lot of races, so you're only really having to worry about slower cars. Now, they're very much, I mean, they've got still, I think, 14 hypercars still running 15 even. So that's a lot of hypercars to have to keep an eye on while also trying to get past the GTEs. And you can see here, car number 5, Patrick Sfilasi, just managing to get past again. I think these hypercars are going to be very keen to get that move done before turn 1, because you're going to lose quite a bit of time stuck behind an LMP2 or even a GTE coming through that first turn. But the reward for these hypercars in this section of the track is once they've got past Walter and Brinkhuizen, there is quite a big stretch of clean air. So you really want to get these moves done on the straight, both for your sake and the sake of the driver you're overtaking. But it does look like, aside from a couple of GTEs, this field has spread out now. We have got a battle for a three-way battle for position 4 between McIntosh, who are with now, and you can see, oh, and he's just been tagged by the LMP2. That's very unfortunate. I've cursed him. Actually, I think that may have been Romain Verdelivo, perhaps, which is he's paying it forward. He's paying forward what happened to him on lap 1 to a completely innocent party. But Verdelivo will be focusing on his own race. I'm sure Morawski and Soldatov here won't be too upset about that, because it's just nice when you're in a three-way battle to just not have to worry about another one. And yeah, perhaps I don't know, Sean, I wonder if maybe the transition into night time has just made things that little bit harder for the drivers.
Yeah, nighttime racing is very different. It sounds weird, but you do have to get those braking points be focused in your mind. If you've transitioned from day 4 to night, as we've just seen, so if you transition from day 4 to night, it makes it a lot easier to actually race into the night, because your eyes adjusted to coming into these cars and it's being night.
Be the excuse I use when I talk about how slow I was in a practice session for this yesterday then, because it was already night time by the time I joined it. It's nothing to do with driver skill, and everything to do with the conditions, which, you know, it is an important part of iRacing. And they have also, and I'm sure this will begin to affect this race, iRacing in their new season build, they've added in track smoothing, so the racing line in theory will get grippier as we get further into the race. But the other implication of that is that off track is going to feel that much less grippy as we get further in, as Jan Curbs manages to get past an LMP2. And we can focus again now on Amber Hawkins, who has slightly managed to drop Jim Kabaka. I think it's kind of benefited everyone here that Verdalivo pitted, because at one point this four-way battle that was probably going to be quite stressful for all involved, it's just returned back to the holding pattern you sometimes see in these European Sprint Series races, where it's not necessarily worth the driver's energy to push too hard when they know they're going to be pitting soon, or they know they've got some traffic coming up. You've got to try and preserve your mental energy, because an hour-long race, when you're sort of fully concentrating on it, as Hawkins does go wide again, so it's the second time we've seen that, into the sub-curve. And yeah, it's interesting to see as we come into the pit stops what is going to happen to the order. Have any of these drivers been able to fuel save particularly? I mean, for example, Jim De Backer has had a hypercar in front of him within sort of draft range for quite a lot of this race, and that may well add up over the case of 32 minutes as it goes. We're expecting the bulk of the pit stops in the next 10 minutes or so, but we'll have to wait and see.
I think realistically the guys will be able to set half a lap. It'll be really, really tight.
Yeah, that is very true.
Interesting differences when you're saying the surface of the engine. So drivers here, they're driving a new car in a new build. A track that we haven't lost in years, that's for a couple of seasons at least now. And it's night time. Just catch up.
Yeah, it's a lot for our drivers to think about. I think it'll be interesting to see if the behaviour over the season improves, although I suspect next week, because we're at Spa next week, which I would like to think most of the drivers here are intimately familiar with the layout of Spa, and it does lend itself to, and you see Hawkins really likes going wide around that last corner. They're picking up the 1Xs there. They've only got 17 to play with before a penalty, and we're looking at 40 plus laps here. This is not really a long-term strategy, especially with how difficult it is to keep these LMDh cars onto the exit of turn 1. It is a tricky, or at least it was for me. Maybe that's just me. It's my own biases showing here. And let's have a look.
It's a new car, Chris. You're in that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. We can go back to Partiglio here, who is still in P3. I mean, the top three of GTE have remained in the positions they qualified in. Although Ogrodnik in the lead. Oh, that's Partiglio. Oh, I believe that's a temporary internet outage there. Mercifully for Alessandro Partiglio's sake, have returned. Still within a second of the stars here, where they've stayed roughly in this order. It'll be interesting to see if Partiglio will be stopped for less time. But I think the plaudits here need to go to Ogrodnik, who has managed to pull out an 11-second gap in just 34 minutes of racing in that Porsche 991 RSR.
The only thing disappointing here is that
yes, I'm surprised we've not focused more on Soldatov and McIntosh, who are in the Ford in 5th and 6th respectively, but it is nice to see three different manufacturers in the top 5 of the GTE fields. Of course, it's not many places these days the GTEs get to drive. It's nice to be able to showcase them somewhere, and it's nice for the most part to have seen the prototypes not murdering them, although I'm sure they wouldn't want me cursing them as Joost Bouwmeester gets around nice and safely on his recovery drive. Now, Bouwmeester was stopped for 21.6 seconds in his stop, so to me that doesn't read like there was particularly that much damage, but we were saying earlier about how this battle for 5th with Hawkins had spread out again. Well, it's come back in, as you can see, we've got a car off on the straight there. Quite sure how they managed that. Is the back going? It may well have been. De Backer looks like he's close enough to go for the move. Is he going to make a late lunge into the hairpin? No, he's not. In fact, Hawkins much braver on the brakes there, I would say. But is that going to affect their exit? And they've got that GTE just in front as well. Are they going to be able to get into the Mercedes arena section? Okay, it looks like they are. That's a very, very kind GTE, just leaving the racing room. Some would say kind, perhaps it's just sensible because you don't want to get killed by other drivers. You can influence that with the placement of your car. Hawkins, I would say, aside from taking that last turn quite wide, hasn't looked particularly under pressure from De Backer, who we know is a very quick driver.
De Backer's made a mistake there. Staging. I think it's much really. Why is it similar pace? Their fastest laps out.
Looks like I think the pit window will beginning to only opening now. We're not expecting any of these cars to take tyres because it's it's just not worth the time it would take, even where the GTEs, for example, can now take their tyres at the same time as they take fuel, like the GT3s now can. And we are back with Verdelivo, who is just 2 and a bit seconds behind Scanfurla. They have both pitted though. Scanfurla pitted 1 lap after Verdelivo, so that would have been about 5 or 6 laps ago now. We've got De Backer and now Hamer in front of them in the pits. So De Backer was stopped for 19.7 seconds, Verdelivo for 23.4. You wonder if any of that was damage or if it was just where Verdelivo... Oh, as we've got a hypercar, I believe that was Roberto Eduard, who was already several laps down. Perhaps do the right thing and just towing before anyone else can get caught up in there. But Verdelivo has managed to get out ahead of Hamer, nice and easy, but is a second and a half behind Jim De Backer. We're with De Backer here, and that is Verdelivo behind him. Now you do wonder, will De Backer know that is Verdelivo behind him? Because of course it's too dark to necessarily make out which car it is. It depends how much these individual drivers like looking at their relatives, and it'll be interesting for me now to see what will Verdelivo's lap times look like compared to De Backer's.
Yeah, so you have to imagine that De Backer's now going to be the attack in as it is out lap. That seems to be the trend going through this week so far. I think it'll be all about how much time Jim can make up now coming out of this for the next couple of laps. Whether Verdelivo can back gap in once the attack is
It does feel like on De Backer's outlap he's managed to catch up at least half a second. While we watch Verdelivo catch him, as he just wiggles a bit there, you can tell he is really pushing that machinery as hard as he can, but he's so smooth through the sim curve compared to some of the other drivers we've seen through there, and that is not a knock on anyone. It's just Verdelivo is just that quick. There's a reason why he is in that number 2 car. Of course, iRacing official sessions, your car number indicates how high your iRating is compared to the rest of the field, so there is only one driver in this field more skilled in theory than Verdelivo, and that is our GTE leader, Ogrodnik. And just to spare a thought for 2 of our 3 class leaders, because if you're in a broadcast race and you're leading a race, the best thing for you is if you don't get mentioned, because that means you're having a nice, easy, simple race. And I don't wish to jinx it for Kevin Crossley here, but we've barely had a chance to focus on him because he's just calmly slotted away. We saw this a couple of seasons ago with the LMP1s. You'd often get 1 or 2 drivers per race. They'd handle that first lap really, really well, avoid all the carnage, and then they'd just churn out fast lap after fast lap after fast lap. And I believe Crossley has set the fastest lap in the entire field with a 1:24.29. That would have been earlier in the race. But I mean, his last lap was only 0.4 of a second slower than that, so it's not like he is miles off the pace he has previously been setting. And Marcello Paniccia in second is nearly 9 seconds down the road. And I mean, the final podium position, or 4th place rather, is 17 seconds down the road. So we're approaching an entire pit stop's worth of time for Krosny to have an advantage, as our current leader of the LMP2s, Christian Walter, has come into the pit lane as well. He's got quite the gap, or has he towed perhaps?
Might have towed, I believe he towed, but not see him in the pits.
And I mean, also the timing tower seems to think he's got a 30-second lead over Brinkhuizen. No, he wouldn't have done. As Brinkhuizen is now coming past and inherits the lead, and Brinkhuizen had already pitted on the previous lap, so that is a sort of natural overtake, as it were. Brinkhuizen is back in the lead, and I would say pretty well. I don't know, is a 3-second gap comfortable? To me it feels like it's comfortable, but we'll have to see what kind of pace Walter has as they come out onto the round lap. Of course, Brinkhuizen's had an extra lap rather, get used to the extra weight in that car.
So P2 hypercar has just come in as well. Interesting to see how that works out with guys that are 40.
Yeah, you've still got quite a bit of the GTE field still to go. We're 2/3 of the way through this race now. Paniccia from second in the BMW field has also gone into pits. Now he was only stopped for 16 seconds with a pit lane time of 36 seconds. So that is the quickest of any of the cars in his class to have pitted so far. Brinkhuizen gets round that GTE into turn 11. A lot safer than I feel like many drivers may well have managed, because again, as we've been saying, it is one of the trickier corners in a multi-class setting on this track. But you do not want to be held up into the stadium section by a slower class car, because you will lose so much time. And I mean, we've seen some of the pace from Christian Walter today. His fastest lap is 2/10 of a second a lap quicker than Green Poison's, and he's only 2.5 seconds behind now, and he has also got past that GT again at rather sketchy place. As Kevin Crosney has come into the pits from the lead of the hybrid field. As has Svilasi from second, of course. Let's not forget that we did have Pinicia in second before the pit stops. It will be interesting to see how that shakes up when they come out, and it looks like Stang has managed to eke an extra lap of fuel out of that car. He's gone round to start lap 29 without pitting. Marshall, another one who has managed that, and that leaves Noel Howski as the only other driver in this hybrid field yet to pit. We'll see if he's about to come in.
The leader already is out of the pits. He's on his way. It's only down to third.
It really is impressive. That just shows you the value of being able to build that lead early on. As Noel Howski has pitted, and this leads just 2 cars in front of Crosney, remaining to pit. Of course, the dilemma here is if Crosney catches up with Marshall, they are on alternate strategies here. To what extent is it worth his time? If Marshall stays out another lap, if you're Crosney, do you want to overtake him, or do you just nip behind to take it easy?
You're going to be stuck in 2 lines. You don't know what the car in front's going to be looking to come in this lap. So there's really no point battling too much. To behind them. They are running quite similar times. If the car in front's out in front of the laps, it's slowing down. You can really race if you go to as much you can.
I think the one thing we perhaps weren't factoring in there is the fact that Marshall's got a nearly empty fuel tank, and therefore a lot less weight in that car than Crosney will do. As Stang from the lead has pitted now as well. Is Marshall going to join him in the pits? Yes, he is. So Crosney re-inherits that lead that he had worked very hard to build. And if you look on the timing tower to the gap, which will clear once Pinicia gets past the start-finish line, he's actually, if anything, extended that gap. It was just under 10 seconds before the pit stops. It's now just under 11 seconds. And indeed, the overall pit time, there was a half-second difference between Crosney and Pinicia's pit stops. So Crosney has gained about half a second in the pit lane, and then half a second on his in-lap and out-lap, as Scant Furler is sort of siding his way through that GT traffic. That was quite an aesthetic move, I felt. That was quite nice to see, because he is the man with Verdelivo right behind him, and Verdelivo has managed to get past Jim DeBacca somewhere on that field. I must say, for the scale of that incident on lap 1, Raymond Verdelivo's recovery drive to 8th and potentially here 7th soon, it really is impressive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that's watching the season, GTE racing, he's so good, and that's what's made the difference. He's doing the same again.
We'll have to think. I don't think Scanfurler's had to worry too much about other cars in his field. It's been quite a quiet race from Scanfurler, up 3 positions from his qualifying place of 10th. And on that front, I think it's worth us pointing out David Marshall, who's now in 5th. He qualified 15th, so this has been an incredibly good drive from him to get through the field. And he's, for the first time in quite a while, in nice clean air, but with 10 seconds up the road to Stang. I think at this stage of the race, Sean, for me, this is a consolidation period. You start not looking so much at gaining when the gap is so far ahead, and you more start looking behind you and think, well, I've got 4 cars behind me within 7.5 seconds. I need to make sure they all stay behind me.
If anyone's done any endurance racing, this is the period of time of the race where it's a little bit different from most race where the extra 15 minutes that this racing has taken. Now is the time for those bits. You've still got 15 minutes to run. And in that 15 minutes, you might be really
Very much the case. We've got Pitiglio in the pits, who I believe was fighting with Nastasi for 2nd and 3rd in the GTE field, but I guess has picked up some damage somewhere, because they are still stopped. They had a 25-second stop compared to Nastasi's 11-second stop, so Nastasi has pretty much secured that 2nd place. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, Tobias Agrodnik is destroying that GTE field. And it looks like it's settling down with the GTEs now. We've not really got any fights. I mean, Soldatov and Borowski in 4th and 5th are about a second and a half away from each other. Aside from that, it's pretty settled down. And again, aside from Scanfurler and Verdelivo, the whole field has settled down. Brinkhuizen in the LMP2 is really benefiting from Baumeister getting hit off the track earlier at the hairpin. But again, you could say Baumeister's recovery to 3rd is pretty good going. That was, oh yeah, there was a spinner there, and Scanfurler as well. We've got a big chunk of curb there. I wonder if yes, I think they have teleported to the pit lane, so that is a real shame for them. But is this that going wide onto the curbs? Has it finally cost them? And a run settled there, and perhaps just where they were a bit unsettled. And yeah, they've just hit the car, lost the front of the car, and you can see the new damage model in action there. And I think they've just decided it's not worth the aggro going to the pit lane. I mean, they've got no headlights. It's probably for the best to not be continuing to race in those situations, because I'm not sure anyone would be particularly thankful for that nasty surprise on the track. But I think let's give Lorenzo Scanfurler some credit here. He's not exactly struggling so far to keep Verdelivo behind, but with more than 12 minutes left in this race, is that going to be enough for one of the fastest drivers we've seen in this series? Of course, I think, in my opinion, Sean, this being a new car, it is a bit of a leveller. Say if these two were in the LMP1s, perhaps we would be seeing Verdelivo warm soft as the sun, but it's not like they've been able to spend weeks and weeks learning this car.
Exactly. They had a week in the day. The schedule was only Monday. Schedule weeks. Yeah, what you're saying is it's a new car. It's night time as well. There's lots of traffic in Terrace as well, and that's another level. At this stage, it's called so you and the element slow down by 2 seconds. It's hard to gauge exactly where it's going to flow around.
Very much the case, as you see Scanfurler here. Oh, we're going to see, oh, there's a spin and some contact there. Oh, and they've both gone round, and that is going to allow the number 25, which is Dimitri Labaliner in the LMP2, wisely getting out of the way, not getting involved in that. Scanfurler re-inherits the position. Verdelivo has now lost that 7th place to Jim de Backer and has got it all to do again. And I'm a little bit surprised to see how unstable those cars were under heavy braking. Let's have another look at that race. Maybe it is just being offline as well. You can see Verdelivo a little bit unsure about what to do, braking quite a bit later and just losing the rear. I mean, I did that several times in practice. Poor Scanfurler. Nothing wrong there. It was just where Verdelivo pushing that a little bit too hard, perhaps offline. Car a little bit heavier than perhaps was used to post pit stop. And let's hope there's not too much damage to Scanfurler. I think, fortunately for him, the backer is now fighting with Verdelivo. You can see it in the background. Actually, no, you can't, because Verdelivo has come into the pits, so that will be de Backer overtaking an LMP2. And I wonder if Verdelivo is going to retire that car, because that is not a fuel pit stop. That is, oh, it might well be a drive-through. He may have hit 17 incident points there. Yes, I think he has done. So that's, again, 4x for a contact like that with Hockenheim is, in my opinion, a very easy track to accumulate those 1x's. We saw earlier with Amber Hawkins going wide on the mid part of the Sud curve, and how easy I think it is to go wide on the Nord curve, which is turn 1. You can rack up those 1x's in an hour of driving in a multi-class series. Those contacts are going to be inevitable if you're not fully engaged. And Verdelivo with a double whammy there, not just a spin, but also the drive-through penalty, and he's now down to 9th. Behind, you can see just in front of him, car number 20, which is Martin Nowopowski.
Yes, this is the position, so Verdelivo's come out. It's still the closest driver to any other opponent. It does really feel like Verdelivo shows.
Yeah, he's that's the best way to get on the broadcast, is to do lots of overtakes and then be involved in lots of crashes. It won't win you any friends, but it will win you a lot of screen time, which is what we're all here for, really. And we can see what's happened to Ogrodnik here, because oh dear. Is that a hardware failure, do you think, Sean? Because that was suddenly just veering straight off, or did he perhaps break his steering rack? but he has also had to go to the pits. We've lost our leader in GTEs.
That was a really, really bizarre one because it'd been incidents. What's that?
Yeah, you see, he's affected someone else there, and I wonder if there's damage from the car there. Let's follow him on board here. This is the engine. Oh, it sounds like he lost the rear a bit there. I wonder if that's a driver who'd already damaged their car somewhere and was just a bit fed up.
Yep, it sounds like he's trying to keep it going, but he didn't. Now.
Yeah, so Leonardo Nastasi, who is having a pretty quiet but safe race, is he going to let that hypercar through? I think very sensibly. You do start driving a bit differently when you're in the lead with an 18-second gap, because perhaps if that had been 20 minutes in with another GT behind him, he wouldn't have been quite so permissive in letting them through. But with just 8 minutes left to go, and what will happen here for those of you who've not raced in this series before is when the clock hits 0, as that's car 13, that's Mattino Kakinau, who is 4 or 5 laps down, so I think he's had an pretty instant-packed race. But yes, when the clock hits 0 seconds, when Krosny or whoever is leading the hypercar field crosses the line, after it's hit 0, that will be the end of the race. And Krosny, that was 2 different class leaders then, because that was a Grodnik, and Krosny can count his lucky stars that he didn't get a more severe contact there. That could have gone so much worse. But it's why we've not said it yet, but we've been thinking it, is that it's in 10 seconds, yes, it's a big gap if nothing happens, but if something happens that's out of your control, it can mean nothing, as Grodnik's found out, and as Krosnik nearly found out, but his gap is still 8 seconds. And Brinkhuizen not happy with someone with their lights at the moment, but again, he's the one with the shortest gap in his field from the leader to second place, so perhaps feeling the stress a little bit more than some of the other drivers.
Yeah, particularly if you get caught in the stadium section, some GTEs, and then lose possibly 2 seconds there just in that section. Only 6 seconds ahead, so
It really is, but with 6.5 minutes left to go, I used to say it all the time, I was a broken record for this, it's the drivers who have got the best mental strength will be the ones that do best now, because it's so easy to just switch off. Maybe you've been concentrating 100%, you just go down to 98%, all it takes is one errant curb hit, and that's your race done and dusted, makes the previous 55 minutes completely pointless, in a sense. And we'll see how Brinkhuizen deals with, I believe, an LMP2 a lap down. That's a lovely Mystery Machine livery there. That's the number 32 of Devin Adams, who is now 2 laps down. Could have made that, in my opinion, a little bit easier, considering at this stage of the race you're not exactly fighting for much. But I think Brinkhuizen is getting closer and closer to winning the first round of the broadcast ESS series. We've got GT to clear as well here. And then we're probably looking at, with a minute 24 per lap, and Krosny not that far behind, we're probably looking at 4 laps left, I reckon. And Krosny's picked it. Oh yeah. Oh, what's that about?
I've just seen he did have an off-track earlier. He's down to 2nd already.
So is this damage? Or is... Oh, it could be damage. Oh, I'd be surprised if damage. Perhaps he's also picked up a drive-through as well. I think, yeah, he didn't stop. He just went straight through. So he's picked up a drive-through too. And we were saying... Yep, and you know, only take two contacts is 8x, and then you've only got 9 left to play with. And you think, well, how many laps have they done? They've done 38 laps, and if we say Nord curve and Sud curve are really easy to pick up 1x's at, you've got to get those immaculately right. That's 76 occasions they've done that now, and you've got to be really on it. And if you're going to drive these cars quickly, you're going to be pushing, and if you're pushing, you're more likely to accumulate these 1x's. So sometimes drivers who are maybe driving a little bit within themselves, so I'm not saying that's what Paniccia's done, but he's not had a drive-through, and he's now in the lead of the race. So just goes to show you, this is a 60-minute race. Just because you've done really well for the first 50 doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the race. And you see what I think is Patrick Spalatti in the background going very, very, very wide into turn 11, I think that is, turn 10 rather, which I was complaining about in a different Discord server earlier about how I just find it impossible to go flat through there, and it amazes me how many drivers seem to find it very easy. But speaking of Discord, we have got the ESS community Discord invite link in the description on YouTube of this video. Feel free to join us and we can chat with. I know quite a few of the drivers in this race today are in that Discord, so you can go and point and laugh at the unfortunate ones who crashed out, and you can go and congratulate the winners at the end. Or if you are a winner, you can be congratulated and feel really good about that. So check the description for the link to that. There is also in the description a link to the donations link. Yes, we are doing this voluntarily. Any donation is obviously completely, it's optional for you as well, but we would gratefully receive that. It helps motivate us to keep putting these on for you week after week. With Spa next week, as we said earlier, really looking forward to that one, Sean.
Yeah, Spa is always a favourite for everyone. Yeah, a lot of drivers turn up for that as well, and it's the first Spa for this new car.
I'd be interested to see how many people who celebrate Christmas would be up for doing an endurance race in that situation. As again, the LMP2 Mystery Machine, not that fussed about making it easy for other people to get past, which to an extent, they're within their rights to do so. But you think with less than 3 minutes remaining, we all just want to get across the line. And Selassie here has got Krosny right on his tail. And I mean, I don't know how many off-tracks Selassie is on, but Krosny served his off-track, his penalty. I doubt he'll have accumulated another 8, because it's 8 more after your drive-through gives you a disqualification. So Krosny can afford to push a bit here, because the safety rating is just a number. So long as you qualify for this series, it doesn't really matter what it is. So second place is first loser, which is a hell of a lot better than second loser, which is third place. And they've got to be careful though, because Smolik Stang in fourth, he is only 6 seconds down the road, and it's only going to take one instant between these two, and he'll be right on them as well. But Krosny just doesn't seem to have the straight line advantage over Selassie to get past him. He seems to be far better into the corners, so it looks like if he's going to make the move, Sean, I wonder if he'll have to do a late nudge into the hairpin next lap. Very much so, and these are the two closest cars on the grid. Scanfurler as well is right on the back of David Marshall, just a bit further back on the BMW field, but he is going to be running out of time, as is Krosny running out of time to get that move done. With Paniccia coming across the line now, this is almost certainly the white flag lap, and he's going to be careful as well, because if he has a misadventure, Selassie is only 5 seconds behind on the track. Let's see how Krosny deals with this here. He's going to have other cars in the way. Oh, that's a bit scary. You can see how loose that car is of Selassie in front. We've got another Hybrid car letting them through. I think that may be Jan Curbs. Yeah, he is, I believe. And he may be the next one up the road. Very defensive from Selassie. Krosny's got braked very deep. Is he going to be able to hang around the outside? Svelassi's closing the door on him. Oh, that's close, and they're going to be alongside as we come into the next two corners and into Mercedes. Selassie has got the inside, but he's going to be the outside as we come into the braking zone for Mercedes. Is Krosny going to get a move done? He looks very confident on the apex. He's just pushed Selassie out a bit wide, and that is a lovely overtake.
That was really, really well done. As he's ended up going into the head.
And also, the good thing about leaving that to the last lap is there's not really any positions for Selassie to get past him, as we go back to Marcello Paniccia, who 40 minutes in did not look like he'd be going through the checkered flag in first place, but it is where you're at after an hour that matters in terms of who wins. And Marcello Paniccia has won the first broadcast race of the ESS season, with Krosny coming in a very creditable second and Patrick Selassie third place. So, if anything, I mean, so for Paniccia, he qualified 5th and has ended up on pole, in the lead. That's very good going, and we've got Kaz Brinkhuizen has come through as well. He has won the LMP2 field, Christian Walter in second, and we are now on board with Leonardo Nastasi, who has got a 17-second gap up to Petiglio in second. We're going to have a Corvette 1-2 here, which is it's not something I'm used to seeing in the GTE field. Now again, I have had 2 seasons away from this series, so who knows, maybe iRacing have tinkered with the GTEs. It would surprise me, but he has got probably the least stressful of the 3 classes drive to the checkered flag, taking it nice and easy. Now you can see, although with fewer and fewer cars on the track, you're beginning to see less and less. You just realise just how dark it has got here in Baden. But he's taking, taking absolutely no risks, to the point I'm almost wondering, is he actually on his in lap? But no, he's not gone through the pit lane. He's almost showboating at this stage, how slowly he's come across the line, and he has taken. It could be fuel. That's a good point. And what he's doing now may well suggest he has fueled that car as tightly as possible. But he has come through in the lead with Alessandro Petiglio in second, and not willing. Or let's see, is he going to crash into the back of him? Nope, he's not going to do that. I am sure Anastasi's thumbs will be grateful for that. And
we'll be back in 1 minute.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head to head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
And welcome back. We have got your race results for you on screen now. So we'll start with the hypercar field, and it's a win for Marcello Paniccia in car number 21. So that is a very good job, and 25 points for the point system we are running for the broadcast races this season. Second place, he led the majority of it, but it's only going to be a second today, just under 5 seconds behind Kevin Krosny, with Patrick Slovasi in third place, having lost that second on the final lap. Stang in fourth, followed by Marshall, who had quite an eventful race, but has managed to keep Scanfurler behind, who finished sixth. Jim DeBacker in seventh, followed by Roman Verdalivo, and then Martin Nowopolski, and Christopher Hamer is the last one who picks up points and the last one to stay on the lead lap there. And we can have a look at the LMP2 field, just the 8 drivers today, but they're all going to score points. Brinkhuizen in the lead, 4 seconds clear of Christian Walter, who comes through second. Joost Bouwmeester recovering after contact from in the lead to third place. He is just 22 seconds behind with Dimitri Lebalinaire. Pretty quiet race for him. He's come through in fourth. Korolitsa in fifth was the last driver on the lead lap, and then Devin Adams 2 laps down, Heather Knapp 6 laps down, and Daniel Rice we lost at the start. And we can also show you our GTE field. 9 drivers here today in that. Leonardo Nastasi in his Chevrolet has won the race from Alessandro Petiglio. They are the only 2 GTEs to manage to stay on the lead lap. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean they lapped everyone. That's just where they came in relation to the BMW hypercars. Sergei Soldatov, he finishes third on the podium in the Ford, with Borowski in fourth, McIntosh in fifth, Ambos in sixth, Smithers in seventh. Ogrodnik, after that late incident, has come through in eighth, where we perhaps expected him to win, and Edgar Blanquez 19 laps down after crashing out. That is our official results for today.
Wow, it's week 1 done. There we go.
It's good to be back, and my voice very much not used to commentating for an hour. It had half a year off, and I've got to train it back up. to watching these races, because it turns out a lot happens, and that's what we want to see.
Big surprise. I think the introduction of the hypercar has really made a great change in the series. Definitely a lot more action track. Previously, before having 6 LMP1 cars, and they lose a couple at the start and then the 3 distance. But I know a lot of people that love the it's in people driving the top class car in the series. I think series.
Oh, I agree. It feels right. It feels like Le Mans a classic for how to have the lead field to have the more cars in it. It's what we want, and we will be visiting Le Mans later on in the season. But as we said a couple of times tonight, it will be Spa next week, which I'm sure we'll see a very competitive field for. And I'm sure some of our drivers will be delighted to hear that one will be in the daytime. So slightly less to worry about on that front. And also, as we mentioned, feel free to join the community Discord. The link is in the description of this video if you're watching on YouTube. We've also, as mentioned, I'm not going to beg too often, but we've got donations button there as well if you would like to donate, because it will just help ensure we can keep this going. It is all done voluntarily. If you'd like to get involved as well, we are always looking for more people to get involved. So feel free again to contact Sean in the community Discord. And yeah, sure. I mean, any last thoughts from yourself, Sean?
No, just looking forward to next week in Spa. Really entertaining. Hopefully we'll get a few Ts and LMPs as well.
That would be lovely. Well, from Sean and myself, we hope you have a lovely evening, and we will see you again next week.